Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome to Everything Co-op. This morning, I have the pleasure of talking to Lori Capouch. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning, Vernon. How are you?
I am great, and congratulations on being inducted into the Co-op Hall of Fame. That's going to happen on October the 9th. Are you excited about that?
I am. I'm excited and overwhelmed, and as anybody in the co-op field knows, it's me standing up there on behalf of a lot of work from a lot of people.
So you didn't do it by yourself?
Absolutely not. Nobody can.
Okay, so let's start by getting people to know a little bit about you. Where did you grow up and go to school?
I grew up in Park River, North Dakota. I moved there in third grade from a metropolitan North Dakota city of 50,000, Grand Forks, and I went to Park River Elementary and high school.
How are you saying it? City Park?
Park River.
Oh, Park River. Okay.
Yep.
I think I've only driven through North Dakota one time. I've never visited it. Is it?
That's a typical story of most people.
Okay. Is North Dakota as pretty as people say it is?
I believe it is. It's got a mix of wide open plains, and then it moved on to rolling hills, and then the Badlands. So a little mix, a little variety.
How was it growing up in Park River?
I loved it. It was a town of about 15,000 people, and it's a community that is really ingrained in being sustainable and supporting people that are working to keep it sustainable. So it was a great place to grow up.
Okay, where did you go to school? I know high school was at Park River High. What about college?
Oh, that's a longer story. I first went to a trade school, Ockers Business College, because growing up in the late 70s, we weren't yet cemented in the dual income family lifestyle, so I wasn't really sure what I was doing. But later in life, I went to University of Mary in Bismarck.
University of Mary?
Mary.
Mary. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In Bismarck, North Dakota.
Correct.
What did you major in?
I majored in business management / organizational leadership.
Why did you major in business management?
Oh, so that's part of my path, I guess, to cooperatives, but I was interested in the way businesses operate and are managed and developed, and that seemed to be the most logical career choice at the time.
I'm curious that how did you come to wanting to know how business operated? What sparked that interest?
Well, okay, I mentioned that I had gone to a trade school.
Mm-hmm.
I became a secretary, what it was called back then. And I would get a job and I just kept bumping into walls. Like I'd get to know the business and want to participate more, but I kept being limited by my title or my lack of a degree. So, I was frustrated by that. And then I got a job with the North Dakota Agricultural Products Utilization Commission, which is a very small state agency that was ran by farmers at the time that gave away money for business development. So those pre-development costs for value-added agriculture, marketing, product development. And while I was there, they rolled out a program for funding for the development of cooperatives. And it was at that point where I was like, oh, it's fun to give away money, but these people stood before that commission asking for money, and they had so much passion and they were so nervous standing up there, but they were giving it their all to try to move these businesses forward. And it was like, I want to be on the other side. I want to see what it's like to be in that. So I went back to school.
I've got a question. You were saying that you were curious, but because of your job title, secretary, people looked past you. You couldn't get the information in a job. Do you think it had anything to do with your gender?
Well, yes, I do believe so. It's more male dominated back in the 80s. Men had more of the management roles back then, and thankfully we've moved past that quite a bit, but yes, I believe that could have been a part of it.
Okay. So you saw these people asking for money and they were passionate and nervous. Did you get a sense of what caused the passion? And I'm going to ask you later what caused the nervousness, but let's get to what caused the passion. Did you ever get to that?
I believe it was the need. So it was farmers that had lost their market, or people that raised a big crop, but the prices were so low they couldn't make their farm operation work. So it was like that really deep need to do something different.
Okay, and what caused the nervousness?
Being in an uncomfortable spot, or not being used to asking for money or asking for help, not sure that it's going to work, but still needing to use somebody else's money to see if it will work. And just in general, it's a gamble working together to make something happen. You all have to find that spot, like that common vision and that place where you can cooperate.
So these were people forming co-ops.
Yes.
They were passionate about what they were doing because they had some particular problem. They may have lost their market. They may not have had enough money to do the business of farming. There are all kinds of potential problems. So they were passionate to solve these problems, and they were coming before this organization to get money to help them form the co-op so they could solve the problem. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
So you got excited enough to go back to school.
Yes. Yeah, a full-time working mom and 2 kids. There were a lot of nights where, you turn the computer on at 10 o'clock p.m. and probably have to pour myself a small glass of wine just to get over my self-pity so that I could dig into my studies. And great support from my husband as well to help me make that happen.
So my mother went back to school with 6 kids.
Oh, my.
Graduated magna cum laude, business degree, which I didn't know until after she passed and I was going through her papers, because she came out and taught elementary school. So I thought she had majored in elementary school, but she majored in business, which I was just totally shocked. In West Virginia, being a black woman, 1960, there was not that many opportunities. So that's
amazing.
One of the reasons I asked you whether it had anything to do with gender, because back then, whether it was 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was harder for women to get into that business world. So I really appreciate what you had to go through to go back to school. So she would get up, she would come home, help us with our homework, food, and then go to sleep and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and study. And I started doing that with her.
Wow.
Okay. And that became my study habit and all the way through college. She really helped me to learn how to study. But back to full-time working mom with 2 kids, seeing passion and nervousness in people forming co-ops, encourage you to go back to school. Okay, so we got your business management.
And, you know, I was always in a hurry to get to the next step. And so I graduated on a Sunday and I started with the rural electric cooperatives the following Tuesday. And it would have been Monday, except it was Memorial Day. So I had to take that day off.
Okay, what is rural electric?
That was my employer, the North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Cooperatives. I worked with them for 26 years in cooperative development.
North Dakota Rural Electric Co-ops.
Yeah, North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Co-ops. So the overarching association for our rural electric cooperatives in the state.
So if people are out there don't know what a rural electric co-op is, can you tell them?
Yes. It is a way to get electricity to rural people in the places that did not seem to provide a cash flow for the private sector to serve way back in the 30s. So people got together and put their money together to form their own company to provide electricity for themselves with support of the federal government.
So the federal government made loans to people to start an electric company so that they could provide electricity for those farms and those rural communities where the big companies, whatever they were called in D.C. as PepCo, would not go there. The bigger companies wouldn't go there because they couldn't get a return on their investment. You said cash flow. Cash flow is part of it, but the bigger part is profit.
I should have said return on investment.
Yeah.
And that is like in our state where co-ops work the best. The places that the private, can't think of the right word now, with the private sector, you know, they can't make a go of it. Nobody would expect people to start a business where they can't earn a living. So co-ops work really well in those spaces.
So you have a capitalistic company that says, we cannot make a profit or a big enough profit to go in and string lines where you may have one farm 5 miles away from the next farm, where in an urban setting, people are next door to each other. They can get more people and therefore bigger profits than stringing all of this line, putting all of this infrastructure in. So 30s, is that during the Great Depression? That they made these loans for people, I think it was during the Great Depression or right after that, these loans were made, which helped, in my world, it helped the U.S. to come out of the Depression with all of these co-ops forming, starting, increasing economy.
Yeah.
Okay, Lori, so you get this job, you graduated on a Sunday and you start work on Tuesday at the North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Co-ops. What were you doing?
Well, my title was Cooperative Development. So my role was to connect with people that were interested in forming co-ops and walk them through that development process, like completing their feasibility study. And so it was like making sure that we got a good request for proposals and find a good consulting company writing that request for proposals. And, you know, all those steps you have to do, the feasibility study, the business plan, make sure you've got a decent market, do the equity drive. So all of those steps to launch a cooperative is, you know, we basically guided them through that process.
Well, all of us needed it when you start any business. In this case, though, you're starting a co-op as opposed to
And
capitalist.
it's really hard with the co-op. Like for your own business, it's it's more personal to you. You know those steps because the banker is requiring it. When you get a bunch of people working together, you first, like I had said a little earlier, you need to get on the same page first and have the same vision. And you're already most likely working full-time someplace else and you're trying to fulfill a need. You need a service or you need a product. So you're forming another company, most likely, that you don't even intend to work at. So you're fully occupied already. So my role was to help make that easier, understanding, that these people are trying to make their communities better or their business sector better by creating one more level of support or another business.
Okay, I have a question that, I'm sitting here, North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Co-ops. They're all about rural electric co-ops. This is the rural electric co-ops in North Dakota coming together in this association. Why are they developing co-ops?
So this association is the only one in the nation, Electric Co-op Association, that actually invests in development that doesn't necessarily benefit their own bottom line. Usually an electric co-op serves customers outside of the towns. And so it's the farmers that have the meters that are spinning, that are paying bills to the electric co-ops. But usually we worked more in a community. And so they have let us work, regardless of whether or not we're creating more meters spinning, to help improve the quality of life for the people that live there. Really, if people aren't happy where they're living, they're going to move away. And we need people living in rural spaces. So if you can't have access to food or healthcare or childcare, you're going to have to move someplace that's more comfortable. So they're investing in making sure that people have what they need in their town. It was fun. It was allowing me to sit at a table and not worry about what's in it for the electric co-ops, but worry about how it does improve the lives of the people and if we're making the right choices to move those projects forward.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
So you have this set of businesses, co-ops, rural electric co-ops, whose main function is to provide electricity for these farmers on this rural world, so people can have lights that can turn on. Okay. And kids don't have to be like Abraham Lincoln and study with a candle. Okay. They can have electricity. So this basic need that we take for granted today wasn't there in these rural communities in the 30s, 20s, 30s, or whatever. So they're there to make electricity, but they decide that they want to help people have a better quality of life by providing food co-ops, healthcare co-ops, childcare co-ops. Okay, and you said it didn't affect their bottom line, but on the big picture, it really does.
Yes, in the big picture, it does. Exactly. But it doesn't influence direction. Like if it's not creating another meter, we were still helping that business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creating a quality of life for people in the community helps the business because the people will stay there and keep those meters spinning.
And since 1990, the electric co-ops, all of the members have been putting in money to support this program. So they've been doing it for a long time.
This the North Dakota group. Okay.
It's the North Dakota Electric Co-ops. And I should also say later on then the broadband co-ops too are putting money into that program to support it. So it's both the electric and the broadband co-ops at this time supporting, I'll just call it rural development because we do a little bit more than co-op development.
Okay.
And I should explain that a little bit. Like in North Dakota, with such a small population base, people don't call you and say like, I want to start a co-op. And so you know that you're working on a co-op project. Usually it's, I have a problem and I need to solve it. So you approach it from that aspect, like you've got a problem and then you help them realize that perhaps a co-op is the best solution, but you help them get to that decision on their own.
Okay, can you give me an example of somebody coming to you and saying, we have a problem, and then you work through coming up with a co-op?
Yes. So childcare would be one of them. We had a statewide childcare shortage, and I know nationwide there's a childcare shortage, so it's not unique to us. So we started out by saying, look, in California, childcare co-ops work, and given our small population base, even though we're not like California, it would work here too. So we started educating. And then people later would call and say, I have this problem with childcare. And so we would come to their communities, we would talk through it with them. So I mean, even though they had the learning for childcare co-ops, they still didn't instantly go to that method, but it's the childcare shortage is definitely one of those examples where co-ops work really well, but you have to help people realize that. And I think part of the problem is that we're so used to somebody just coming in and starting a business. Like that's easy, right? Like just help somebody start the business, or, there's simpler ways than a co-op. It's harder to form a co-op. So people resist it just a little bit.
So what makes it more difficult to form a co-op? You said it's harder. So we have a problem. We don't have child care, or whatever child care is available. It's too expensive. There is a problem taking care of the children so the parents can go to work. So what makes it harder to form a co-op than Lori just going and open up her own child care center?
Yeah, so if I was to just go and open up my own childcare, I'm starting a business for myself. And so, that path is a little clearer. If I have 6 kids at home and I need childcare and I don't have it, I have to find other people that also really need it. And then we have to find time to get together and hold those meetings and agree on the type of childcare we want, and agree we're willing to take a risk in starting it and move forward with it. Like, you can launch a co-op, but then once it's done, you have to remember that you still have to operate it as well. So it's demanding a little bit more of the people of the community. And I'm not saying it's like insurmountable or anything like that. It just takes a little bit longer. Like, the joke, co-ops take longer to get their decisions made because it's a collective decision. You all have to get on the same page.
I have it. So I was going to ask you, but I'm going to tell you what I have learned and see if you've learned this also. It takes less time to form an individual company because there's only one person. They set it up. They don't have to get agreement. Maybe with a bank, maybe with a lawyer, maybe with an accountant, but not the employees. And if you form a co-op, same business, childcare, say, then you have to get agreement with other people. If there are 2 people, and anybody who's been married knows this, sometimes it's hard to get agreement, particularly if they're 180 degrees apart. They're on different ends of the spectrum. It takes time to work through, talk through, and sometimes people don't know how to do that. They don't know how to work through or talk through. They just want whatever they want because they're right. Okay, so it's harder. But what I've come to is that if you start a co-op and an individual business at the same time, the co-op normally will be around after 5 years, where the individual business, normally 90% of them fail. Have you seen that or experienced that?
Yes, I would agree. If a co-op is rolled out properly, like knowing the correct business steps and going through the proper, like having enough startup capital and things like that, good management, getting on the right feet. I do agree that the co-ops are stronger. Sometimes though, if they've entered as a competitor into a marketplace and there's larger companies that can buy them out on a dime for $1, they can shut them down. So have to look out for the wolves out there.
Yes.
And make sure you can sustain without them.
Yes.
Or amongst them, I should say, not without them.
In a book called Collective Courage, Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nimhard says that a lot of the co-ops, particularly the Black community that got started with work education bees, or they would get together in the evenings and study and work out all of these things that you've talked about, get agreement on all of these things. And because they do this education before when it starts, why it's starting, they're always educating. And that's the main reason that she's come up with in her book, that they last. Okay. And you have to watch out for the wolves. There are all kinds of wolves, market and races and all kinds of different reasons that people will come after you. So you have to be careful in the marketplace.
Exactly.
Okay. North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Co-ops. Can you give me, you mentioned childcare. What other kinds of business did you start to solve some community problem?
We started a meat plant co-op. And at the time, I didn't know of any other examples across the nation for meat plant co-op. Also, one that's getting a lot of traction right now is the rural access.
Let me talk just about the meat plant co-op a minute.
Sure.
Because I haven't heard of a meat plant co-op either. So who are the members of the meat plant co-op? Who owns the business?
This is going to sound crazy, but it's the members of the community. It's a town of 138 people. And they sold, I think it was 200 shares at $5,500 a piece to roll out this meat plant co-op. Their former operator had passed away unexpectedly, so they were left with this large hole in their economy in this really small town and no logical buyers for the plant.
Okay, so you've got a business that's going on in a community of 138 people. The owner of that business passed away suddenly, and the people there will lose their jobs if it closes.
And more importantly was that the ranchers were losing their local place to take their animals. And small meat plants kind of serve that management tool for ranchers. Like if you have an animal that needs processing right away, they need a place to take it.
Okay. So 138 people, you've got ranchers that have cows or sheep or whatever they have, and this meat processing company owner passes away. So it will hurt those that work there and those that use the meat facility.
Exactly. Yeah.
Listen, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Please don't touch that down. Grandma's Everything Co-op, and we're talking to Lori Capouch today, and she's from the North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Co-ops. At least that's where she retired from. And we're talking about her work at helping developing co-ops. You know, Lori, this October, next month, we celebrate 12 years being on air talking about co-ops. And our main sponsor has been a national cooperative bank. NCB's mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities. And more often than not, rural electric communities are low-income. But they do this by providing innovative financial and related services. And you've mentioned a couple times already, Lori, that finding places that these co-ops that you have developed can get the money they need. Have you ever had the opportunity of using the National Cooperative Bank?
Well, unfortunately not for the co-ops that I rolled out. They were in very hard to serve places with low cash flows, probably not the most attractive starting out for financing, or we tried to roll them out without the need for financing. So, no, I know that our electric co-ops are great proponents and users of that program, but
Okay.
Unfortunately, not the co-ops I worked with.
Yeah, the National Cooperative Bank has relationships with a lot of rural electric co-ops.
I should add, they didn't deny, we just didn't approach them. So it wasn't like they denied any relief.
So right before the break, we were talking about the meat plant co-op that was in a town of 138 people. The meat plant operator had passed away, and so now this community has lost a big business that their employees are there, and also the ranchers went there to have their meat processed. So they sold 200 shares of stock at 5,500 each, and formed this co-op to own that meat plant process. How did that work, and what was your role in that, or what was the role of North Dakota Association?
So it was that technical assistance to guide them through that process, to make sure that they still had a feasible market, that they were aiming to process an adequate number of animals that would cash flow that business, getting them set up with the securities commissioner, and getting their equity drive documents through a legal firm. So, making sure that they were doing what they needed to do to launch that business. That was our role in it.
Okay. So I assume you had other people. You started off saying that in order to get the Hall of Fame, it was a lot of people. Did you know how to work with the Security Commission to get that approved?
No, that was my first one. And actually I learned that honesty is the best policy. And if something hasn't gone quite right, you just, in North Dakota anyhow, call them up and talk through it, admit any sins that have happened, and they help you correct what's gone wrong. So there's a lot to know about security. They were very forgiving about it, and very supportive of this type of project moving forward. So great. I didn't know a lot, but they were great to work with.
So I assume 138 people, and you sold 200 shares of stock. That somebody bought 2 shares of stock, or was it just one person?
The meat producers bought more than one share, and at the end they were having trouble getting over the hump, raising enough money, and at the end they all ended up buying a few extra shares. And it's at that point I earned this really cool nickname of Battle Axe. And some people might take offense to that, but as a really shy person, I took some pleasure in that because, I was the one that kind of told them, you have extended your security offering as long as you can. And if you don't put the money in now, you're done. And so they did. They sat around that day and they all put their money in and finalized their equity drive.
So that's a $1.1 million equity drive.
Yeah. Which isn't a lot in today's dollars, right? But it is a lot for that community and for investing in an unknown.
What year was this?
This was
Approximately.
Vernon, 2005.
Okay.
That's a big guess.
Okay.
Probably a little later than that.
So I find getting $5,500 from people, 138 people community, would be difficult. That just not a lot of people will have $5,500. Matter of fact, before COVID, there was a study done that said 47% of Americans didn't have $400 if they had an emergency. Okay, so it's just a lot of people around that don't have money. If it was a single black woman head of the household, they had a negative $6,000 net worth. They owed more than they owned. Okay, so getting somebody to come up with $5,500 in such a small community, and then getting 200 of these sold, seemed like you had to be more than a battle axe. Really push it.
Well, and they were the ones that sold it, right? They put their heart into it, and this is really an amazing community. It's Bowdoin, North Dakota. when this operator passed away, he also operated the grocery store. So imagine a grocery store in a town of 138 people, really hard to cash flow, right? But they also emerged with a co-op grocery store, and now they operate a community-owned thrift store that cash flows, that provides money for the shortfalls of the grocery store. So it's not a lot of people, right, to make sure that this stuff keeps moving forward. They've got a lot of heart in that community.
Yes. And they have learned how to come together, pool whatever resources that they have, not just financial, but skills and knowledge, to form these businesses together and work together to benefit the community, to benefit each person in the community.
And they, quite frankly, probably wouldn't have a Main Street remaining if they hadn't done that.
What's the name of the community again?
It's Bowdon, Bowdon. Another interesting fact about that meat plant is typically when you work on getting permitted for a meat plant, there's a lot of people contesting its location. Nobody wants to live next to a meat plant. This one is smack dab in the middle of Main Street. It's their badge of honor. They're so proud of it.
Don't they smell, though?
I can't smell it when I walk through it. You know, it's not a feeding facility or anything like that, and it's a small plant, so it doesn't hold a lot of animals.
Okay.
They have a good waste system.
You made me want to go to Bowdon, North Carolina to see these people and meet them. Coming together, working together. I could see this in all rural communities, that if they were to come together like this, they can lift themselves up.
They're a shining example.
Okay.
But it's also understandable how rural people get tired when you hear, because besides what I stated, they also have their emergency services and their fire. You know, there's a lot to do in a small town.
EMS and fire trucks.
Yeah.
Do they have police?
They have regional police.
Yeah.
Not enough people to need one full time.
You know, if it's a community where people are helping each other, there's not probably a lot of people stealing, but okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I've not had in the 12 years a community like this that have come together and create whatever businesses that they need to survive. But it takes a lot. You're raising a family, you got your personal issues, and then you might be on the board of one of these, if not two of these businesses. Okay, and then you've got to volunteer for the fire truck or whatever. So yeah, it's
Great.
yeah, not for the faint of heart.
No,
But they
but
can.
there's definitely, you know, that feeling of community is craved by a lot of people, belonging to something.
And it sounds like the quality of life in that community would be high. People would feel really good about living in a space where they have control of what goes on. They have a say in what goes on in that community and working together.
I would agree with that. And, you know, one of the things I've said upon reflecting on my career is that you build these relationships. So you go in and you help them build these cooperatives, and you become really good friends, and it feels like they're your colleagues. And then they launch their business and they're doing fine. And then I have to say goodbye. And I have to go find the next group of people to build my relationships with. And hopefully they'll trust me and they'll work with me. You know, it's like you build a lot of friends, you have a lot of colleagues across the state, but you don't get to continue working with them. But, you know, it's hard to walk away sometimes.
Yes.
You just want to stay there.
Yes. And you mentioned trust.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that each of these businesses need to create within themselves, too, is this trust.
Yes. If you can't do that early on, you're just probably not going to get very far in your work.
Right.
and trying to build a co-op.
So I want to change now to the grocery business. How did that happen? What happened in this grocery co-op that you helped to form?
So this is one where I kind of, well, I went against all practical advice on how to start a cooperative. Like I had been told you need to wait for people to want a co-op. But in this case, I could see that the grocery sector was failing in our state. I've been in my position for probably 15 years, had never received a phone call from a grocer. And then in 1 year, I got 10 of them that were saying like, oh, we need help, we're failing, do you have grant money? And so I did a little research. I identified a declining trend of grocery stores, a really stark declining trend, and understood that without food access in a small town, at least within 10 miles, it's just not going to work. You need to have access to healthy food. So I started pushing the concept of working regionally to get access to supply and distributing it from hubs. So kind of like a spoken hub model or a shared services cooperative. So I had to first find like a group of grocers that would trust me enough to try a new idea.
Okay, so let me understand this. When you talked about grocery co-ops, I'm thinking of a food co-op, an individual store, where the consumers own it. That's what I think of. In this case, you were saying there are a group of grocery stores that are failing. You find the trend. They're going out of business. And so these communities don't have grocery stores.
Well, they still have the store, but they're struggling.
Likely will go out of business and won't be around if you don't do something. That's the problem, the community problem. Okay. So then you start advocating for a co-op, but it's a different, it sounds like it's a purchasing co-op. What is that co-op? What does this co-op do?
So this co-op, it's called the Rural Access Distribution Co-op. They buy their wholesale food together. Well, yeah. So like they have a primary supplier that delivers the wholesale food to the back of one of the larger grocery store. But along with that, all the smaller suppliers also deliver the food to the back end of this larger grocery store. So you have food being delivered from several different suppliers that is then cross-stocked, or it's sorted by store location and delivered to the members that are outside of that. Boy, I did a bad job explaining it, but to
I got
other stores, the smaller stores. So it's like a spoken hub. You've got the hub that's aggregating thing and delivering it to the spokes. And the reason that this works is because now instead of having 30 trucks go to that really small town, you just have one truck, and they're all getting the same price of that larger town. So they're getting a little better price. They have access to more suppliers and better variety because they don't have to buy so much at one time. And they can also aggregate local foods in that small town, or small in the back end of that larger hub store as well. So you can also move local foods on this hub. And not to make the story too long, Vernon, but the other thing you can do then is the schools can purchase food through these smaller spoke stores, but the co-op owns the truck. So the schools can get food through the grocery store delivered directly from the co-op. So they don't have to drive to the store to get their food. They can get it directly. Like our schools depended on like institutional food suppliers, and our schools are so small that they can't get fresh food on the plates for the children. So if they can buy it through the grocery store and get it delivered, kids now have apples on their plates and fresh carrot sticks and all sorts of more healthy foods that they didn't have access to before. So it's just like owning your own distribution locally and not depending on a large business telling you what you can and can't have. It empowers you to get the food where it needs to go in your region.
Okay, so this is like a purchasing co-op where the larger grocery store is the warehouse. That's what I'm putting in my words so I understand it. So the larger grocery store is the warehouse, and they take from the big suppliers and the small suppliers and then send out to, so one truck goes to the smaller stores, so there's less cost there, and they can get the same price that the larger store get. They can get the quality and the variety. And furthermore, the schools can get that same thing delivered to them so that they, at a price that the schools can afford, and the kids can get fresh produce on their plate, fruits and vegetables on their plates. Sounds fascinating.
And you can move local foods, because we have had trouble figuring out a local foods hub here, and it just doesn't cash flow because we're so small. Our towns are so small and there's so much distance between it. So if you don't have to drive your local foods individually to each market, if you can just take it one spot and get it delivered and not have to pay for that delivery because, you know, it's already paid for by another source. So it helps invigorate local foods as well.
So the local farmers have a place to take their food.
Yes, they can, yes. And the one other difference is that instead of a warehouse, we call it a hub because it's in and out. The larger store doesn't store anything for the other stores. It gets dropped off and moved again. So it stays fresh for all of the communities.
Okay. It's a hub.
Yeah. I got a lot of heat over the word warehouse. I'm going to use the word hub.
Yes, I get it. I just wanted to make sure I understand it. They bring it in and send it right out. Okay.
I actually was called crazy a few times for trying to do this by the industry itself, like suppliers, people that were in this field, not the grocers themselves, but you know, you hit something square on, like a need, when people call you crazy.
And I assume you said, yes, I am, and now let's get this done.
No, at first it's like,
So you've been a battle axe and crazy. Okay. God, this sounds like a fascinating idea to get cost out of the system and get better products to the clients, whether that's schools or individual people.
and you know what was really interesting is that in the middle of trying to roll this out, I got a phone call from NYU that was trying to do the same in the Bronx. And they had heard about the idea, and they explained to me how similar inner city is to rural places, because really what's being marginalized is small business. Like there's a law that's supposed to protect us from price fixing, protect small businesses from price fixing that's currently being ignored, that's not being enforced, that's allowing for this concentration nationwide. It's why we're getting all of these large businesses that we can't compete against. So we're having trouble getting food into the inner city corner stores in the Bronx, as much as we're having trouble getting food into these small rural stores. It's because we can't get the price, we can't get the variety. If we're not large enough, we can't get the suppliers. So I feel like there's a lot of organizing based in power and people that could force that law to be enforced. But there's also a lot of money in the large businesses that might keep us down.
And what's the name of that law?
It's the Robinson-Patman Act.
Okay, so I didn't remember it at the last CCMA conference. Somebody got up and spoke about that law and said exactly what you just said. It's on the books, but it's not enforced.
Yes, it needs to be enforced if we're going to keep our inner cities and our rural spaces healthy. Like, we need that law.
Okay, and I took away from that conference, and that I don't even know why I went into that particular workshop, but it was fascinating of what can we do in a co-op world to get that Robinson-Patman bill out there. There's enough people. There's 1/3 well, I think it's 130 million people belong to co-ops, and unfortunately most don't know if they belong to credit union or a food co-op or a consumer co-op that most of the people belong to. Okay, so we talked about, let's talk a little bit about childcare. Okay, got to the grocery store to meet, and we mentioned childcare, but there's something else you wanted to talk about in the childcare space.
So childcare has been really tricky because it doesn't cash flow necessarily. Like, you can't pay people what they need to be paid to earn a living, and it's a hard job, and you're entrusting your babies with these people. You want good people caring for your babies. But what really struck me and really got me passionate about childcare in North Dakota was some of the stories. And one in particular, I went to a town that needed childcare, and they told me that there was a waiting list that you needed to get onto to get pregnant in order to get a spot at a childcare center.
I didn't understand that. There's a waiting list to get pregnant?
So there was organization going on over who got to have the next baby so you could keep your job, because they wanted to keep their job and have a daycare provider. So I can't imagine the stress behind that. And I also ran into a couple that they were working in an oil patch in northwestern North Dakota. They had family in southeastern North Dakota. They would drive their child to the grandparents for daycare and go and get the kid and be with the kid every other weekend for 2 days. Like, this is your kids, and you need to work, and you can't raise them. You can't have them with you because you don't have any childcare. So we needed it desperately. And it was funny, in that one town where they had that list, they actually started out trying to do 30 spaces for childcare, and the employers came back and said, no, we're going to do at least 75. Like, we're going to take a bigger step forward. And it was co-op businesses trying to form a co-op, and their ability to look past the risk and understand what cooperation is like, and their willingness to put their neck out and make sure that they can get childcare was really instrumental in moving that childcare center forward.
So what did the childcare center look like? Did the parents that took their children to the childcare center, did they own the business, or did the people that worked in the business own the business?
Well, we started out as employer-assisted childcare, and the employer sat around the organizing table with the intention that they were going to turn it over to be a parent-owned cooperative. But when it came time to transition it, the employers didn't want to step away. They wanted to stay involved, so they stayed involved. So it is an employer assisted childcare cooperative with the parents serving on committees for the oversight. So they help pick the director, and they help work with the curriculum and things like that. So they have some ownership in it, but it turned out to be an employer based cooperative.
Lori, this is fascinating, particularly a waiting list to see who will become pregnant and have a child, so they'll be able to take their child care.
Not bad.
That's a tough community problem.
About rural population decline. Well, to me, that was like one reason.
Yes. What message would you like to leave people with in the last 30 seconds?
Don't be afraid. If you have a need that needs to be filled, find others that might have the same need. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. There's a lot of people working in the space that can help you. And typically it's not rocket science. It's been done before. We've had childcare, we've had grocery, we have meat plants. You just need a different way of making it happen.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so very much for taking time out to be with us today.
It was fun. Thank you.
It is fun talking to you. I've learned a lot. The meat plant place and the child care, the different issues that I haven't heard of before. Everybody out there, we will see you next Thursday. Please live cooperatively.